Welcome to the British Online School podcast. And today we're going to be discussing education and cryptocurrency. To discuss this today, we are joined by 1BusyGuy, who also go by his name of James DiMeo. Thank you for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, usually at this time, we begin the podcast by talking about your previous work, what you've done to become very successful, and then we go on to talk about your education and did it help. But actually, I think today is slightly different, isn't it? Because with you, it feels like we're right at the beginning of something that's very exciting for yourself. Do you agree?
Oh, yes. At this point, I think you're absolutely right.
Oh, fantastic. So if I'm going to hand it over to you now, if you can just tell us a little bit about your past jobs, what you've done to build up to this very moment, and then what are you actually currently getting ready for right now?
Sure. So I've always had a love for technology, even when I was just like 5 or 6 years old. First Commodore 64, learning programming languages and stuff. But as I got through corporate America, I found out that it wasn't really a fit for me, and that I needed to kind of take my education to the next level. I went through traditional schooling, which was fantastic. I had a kind of a knack for art, build things with my hands. I gave a go at architectural engineering at Drexel University. So I tried a whole bunch of things that I thought would stimulate, my direction in life. But what I fell into was teaching myself programming languages. I worked for a healthcare industry, which is not very exciting, but I kind of upped the game by building websites for Aetna at one point in my career. But like I said, corporate America didn't really work out. I was laid off, and then I had to find my path again. And I found that in games. And games are, in any child's or teenager's life, is usually a real fun way to pass the time and also engage with other people. So technology has kind of been like my roadmap in a way. And I did go to university. I went to college for 4.5 years. And what I picked up from there was my art. I kind of fine-tuned my art skills. And that got into graphic and digital design, which everything kind of came to everything kind of came together when I melded my artistic ability with my technology, learning technology. So where does crypto come into play here? Well, after some tries and tribulations of trying to understand the technology and getting involved with it, in 2017, I bought my first Bitcoin. And at the time, it was probably around a few $100s, maybe like $600. And that sounds ridiculous today because it's $67,000, right? But amazing enough, I started to teach myself crypto the same way that I taught myself other coding, like coding websites and whatnot. And I had an affinity for it. I instantly fell in love with it. But not only that, at this stage of the game, I had started a family, and I started to have kids that were really interested in Minecraft and Roblox and games such as these. And they would play them all the time, and we would play them together. But then I saw certain connections as my knowledge of this technology grew, where they could become involved. And that's sort of what I think Danny is talking about, something that really struck me. And it was kind of a pivotal point in my career in technology, was to start the education of cryptocurrency, blockchain, and all it can provide for children and teenagers. Because I think that this technology, just like the technology that got me out of corporate America, that kind of broadened my mind and got me to a whole different creative space in that time, is the same place we are now with teaching kids the building blocks of what's to come in our future. So I really feel that starting a company to educate children from as young as 6 or 7 through the teens and then into their adulthood is going to be beneficial for them, not only from a artistic or creative standpoint, and opening up job opportunities in the market, but also kind of setting them up financially in how to save money in this new and unique way outside of traditional banking, would really help grow future generations to come.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And it's great, like you say, that the main bit of that is what we're building up to and what you're starting right now is that teaching cryptocurrencies to everyone. And what I think is really nice hearing about you talk about that is you started your career a long time ago, didn't you? I mean, like you say, you're a father, you've been through many different jobs. So I hope you don't take any offense to this, but you're not a young teenager messing around on the computer, are you? You're taking this seriously. This is your career. What would you say to maybe the parents who are listening right now who may think, oh, cryptocurrency is a bit too techie for me, or it's too old for me to learn anything new like this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it is kind of a scary subject. I'm 45 years old, so yes, I'm not a young buck. And when I try to explain to people, or my wife tries to explain to people what I do for a living or what I do for work, they say, oh, that Bitcoin stuff, it's too complicated for me to understand. But that being said, when I show their children or their teenagers how to do just the simplest things, and then their parents see that they're now involved in something that they thought were too difficult, they start to bend and flex and say, wait, you know, if my son or daughter can do it, then I'm interested in learning more about it. And especially around our age at 45, we start to think about, well, how am I going to retire? You know, what's the best method for me to ensure that I have money to pay for my children's education, or, you know, other sorts of things start to click, and they're like, well, maybe this is an opportunity not only for, you know, my kids' education, but for my education. So I think getting the kids excited about it it kind of bleeds over to the parents starting to accept it, feeling not uncomfortable to get involved or to ask questions, because always asking questions is difficult for older people because they feel as if they should know everything. But kids, they ask a bazillion questions, which is wonderful, because sometimes they ask the questions that the parents are a little bit too reluctant to ask.
Yeah, brilliant. We're going to come back to your new project in a minute, and we're going to go into a lot more detail in it. But I just want to go back a few steps. Like you say, you were working in corporate America, in a pretty stable job. What gave you that final sort of push? And I ask this because I know a lot of children at school don't quite know what they want to do, and they feel like there's so much pressure on them that they have to get it right first time. And you're sort of showing that that's not the case. But at what point did you realize, actually, I need to break free of this and do my own thing? I have confidence in myself to go and do my own thing.
Well, I think from a very young age, school was very important. And it was so important to the fact that, you know, if you didn't get into a good college, you'd never succeed in life. And I really took that to heart. And my mother and father, my mother worked 3 jobs. My father has been in real estate for over 35 years, very hardworking people. And I mean, that's how they were raised, and that's how they raised me. Uh, and I guess, I think after the first time I put all of myself into it, like right out of college, I started to work as just like an insurance agent for Aetna US Healthcare. And I moved myself up the ranks, and I did the best that I could. And I had a 401k, you know, I was making good money. And then something happened where I said, well, I want to be, I'm not, I don't feel like my value isn't being seen here. So that's when I first taught myself how to do HTML and code websites for Aetna. And it was that one springboard that not only upped my salary, but it put me into a different area of the company that was more, that saw my value. Now, unfortunately, it was cut short because the company itself had gone through some hard times and we were laid off. But it was at that point where I saw that taking that initiative to teach myself something new, to excel, was very freeing. Now I have, you know, control over my own time. I don't have, you know, a lot of pressure on me, And my parents were happy with me also, because I didn't follow exactly what they wanted me to do, but at the same time, I had taken an alternate path that was still kind of business. But it was business for myself, which is wonderful. So I think it was after I got unfortunately laid off from that job that my train of thinking started to change as to how I could excel outside of the walls of traditional, the traditional workplace.
I think that's brilliant. And it's so nice to hear people say that. Because I think in the classroom, we can tell students a lot, oh, you can be anything you want, believe in yourself. And I know from being a student not that long ago and talking to the students I teach today, you can still see in the back of their heads, they don't quite believe it. And like you just said, their parents are telling them, get a job, go up the ranks, do all that. But it's so nice to hear people who have done that, but then said, actually, no, I do believe in myself. And it's fascinating and a real pleasure to hear people say that. So you've done all that, you've got yourself on your own, and now you're just about to start something that's super exciting. You've already touched on it a little bit. And like I say, the name of this podcast is Cryptocurrency. So please use this time to go into real detail about what it is you're creating, why cryptocurrency is so important in what you're doing, and how everyone, not just the students, can be involved in what you are doing.
Okay. So let me just start out by saying briefly, when people hear cryptocurrency, the first thing that comes to mind is Bitcoin, because that's the one kind of iconic symbol that has represented it. And most of them apply it to just money, okay? There is such a broad spectrum of functionality and use cases for cryptocurrency in the blockchain that span not only personal but corporate environments. So for my project specifically, what I want to do is I want to start a company, a nonprofit foundation that will allow me to raise funds to support separate projects to help young people either start their own businesses or whatnot. Now, from that foundation, I'm building a platform which will allow people to come and learn for free, in part, the basics, the fundamentals of how to get started with cryptocurrency. Now, one of the biggest projects that I've gotten involved with since 2017 is Cardano. And the reason why I kind of fell onto Cardano is because without a lot of knowledge in the beginning, I saw that it was basically made up of engineers and scientists that were writing papers and papers and papers and theories and proving facts before they went forward to launch any products. So they're very slow to launch, but they were very accurate and specific and detailed in how they did things. And that's what kind of engaged me into following that project very closely. And I have since 2017. I'm part of many communities. Anyway, the communities that I'm in are not just Cardano centric. I like to be diverse, and just like everyone else should be diverse in cryptocurrency and this stuff. You have to learn the basics. So how does one set up a wallet? How does one even start? That's the biggest thing in life, is just to start. Too many times I know I'm a victim of it, and my kids, and you procrastinate and you put it off. Oh, I'll read about it later, or I'll get to it when my free time, or maybe on the weekends or at night. But my platform is going to be easy for you just to begin from somewhere, and through the free portions of it, you'll be able to do everything. Learn the basics, get a wallet, an NFT. What's an NFT? You probably hear it on the news or probably see people with artwork that they're selling, and you want to learn more about it. Through the platform, we'll actually show you and give you the tools necessary to make your own NFTs and get them onto the blockchain for people to see and to purchase. And anyway, I'm kind of rambling because I'm excited about it, Danny, but I mean, it's just, I want to provide the tools necessary for someone as young as 7 years old to go on there and understand how to get started with cryptocurrency and excel in it.
So you say as young as 7-year-olds, and now I can imagine a parent, I'm not a parent myself, but obviously I have dealings with them, thinking cryptocurrency. So like you said, they will instantly think of money, and then 7-year-olds. So is there a risk for these 7-year-olds to be playing around with money at this young age? Could they potentially lose a lot of their parents' money?
Well, you know what? I thought about that before, but my children have been immersed in technology since they were born. My kids were on my lap when I was working in game development, so I guess my story is a little different. Um, but if you look at the age in which a child gets a cell phone today, or when they first touch a computer today, it's a lot younger than when we were young. I mean, I think I got my first computer when I was 13, 14 years old. Today it's, the parents handing their phones to their little kids to play with so that they can get something done. So it's kind of inherently, technology is being integrated at a very young age to these children. Now, to answer your question about safety, um, we're here to educate, and we're hoping that the parents come in and follow along with it. Of course, you wouldn't want to engage in any sort of banking practices until you're much older, but it's always good to learn theory and practice prior to actually executing on that. I mean, I think when I was around 7 or 8, I had a bank book. And it was like a journal. And every time I got my allowance or birthday card with cash in it, I would take that with my book to the bank, and I'd hand them the book, and they would stamp the book with how much I put in it, and that's how I did my banking. But nowadays, if someone has an iPad or an iPhone or an Android, it doesn't matter. If you're connected to the internet, that's how easy it is to use cryptocurrency to start. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring awareness to the advancements of this technology at the youngest age possible. So by the time they're 13, they're an expert. That would be a wondrous goal. And then they would have all the tools necessary to start their own business as they got into their teenage years.
Brilliant. I think that's so great. And a lot of what you're saying about learning this at a young age is, we totally agree with that as a school, a part of our ethos. We believe the education needs to be modernized, and cryptocurrency is definitely the way forward. That's why it's so exciting to have you on this podcast. But it's not just you, is it, working on this? There's a whole team of experts and people who really know the field working alongside you, correct?
Yes. So I started this process a few months back, and Cardano has a Catalyst program. A Catalyst program is where you can submit your ideas and your projects for funding, and the community then votes on your projects. So it just opened up just a few days ago, but along the journey, I started a Twitter space, which is basically like an open forum on Twitter. And I've met so many wonderful people, one of which is building the platform that I've been talking about. There's some other teachers that are helping with curriculums. There's a CEO of a marketplace coming into the picture, which will use his knowledge and experience to write some of the preliminary kind of get started type of modules, like videos. So my goal is to get as much content from many different sources to stimulate the kids' excitement about it. I don't want them just seeing my face. I want them seeing the faces of people that have been in the business for a long time, but also my 11-year-old daughter. My 11-year-old daughter's name is Abigail, and she was just on one of the Twitter spaces with me, where she explained she did a presentation for her school about what an NFT is and how she's using her drawings to start her own collection that she wants to get online. And the response I got back from a 30-second plug about what she's doing with NFTs, they wanted more. They DM me, they're like, oh my God, it's exciting. It's also great to have, the female aspect in it, because usually it's just guys doing this stuff, and it just kind of blew up. And for the next 2 hours, we talked about my project and how we can get it going. So to your question, I have top level people that want to contribute content. I have my daughter and her friends. I have a developer and some other sponsors that are interested in getting involved. So it's just it's starting to, really get some momentum. And I'm excited. And hopefully I'll be able to launch it before the end of the year.
Brilliant. So we've seen or listened to you, and you've said how you've gone up the corporate ladder, you've got loads of promotions, you suffered obviously a job loss, but then built yourself back up, built your own thing, and now you're working on a massive platform to teach cryptocurrency, working with a whole group of people. So there's lots of skills in that we can see that you have. And obviously the important question that we always ask is, do you believe your school education has helped you create this big, hopefully what's going to be such a successful platform?
I do. I do. And I believe it's not just the school, but it's the teachers that are key in pushing a student forward. In high school, I had a teacher that pushed me to build a roller coaster out of balsa wood. And I said, oh, I can't do that, and but here's some books on roller coasters. And then my physics teacher got involved. And so even from a very young age, I thought that it was beneficial. Now, did I think high school was exciting? No, I think everyone thinks that school was a little bit boring and they don't want to do homework and whatnot. But what it did is it kind of built the foundation of what I liked and what I didn't like. So when I got out of high school and into college, I was more focused onto what direction my likes were pointing me to. And that was all because of some of the teachers that I had. In college, I went to college for fine arts. So I was painting and sculpting and drawing and whatnot. And that kind of honed my skills. I was in photography. And again, it was the teachers that guided me through and actually, encouraged me to push the limits. And then there was also the social community aspect. I know a lot's changed in 2020 as far as socialization, but I think that as we move forward, I think we're going to find new ways to be social with one another. This technology is going to break some barriers to increase community. I still talk to one of my old teachers. His name is Gus Sermis, very famous painter. I mean, not famous, but he's a really excellent painter. And he's probably around 86 years old now. And he asked me and my friend if we could convert some of his paintings into NFTs for his own gallery launch, which I thought was wonderful. And again, this ties back to what you said. School is so important, even after you graduate, because there's still that connection that's still going to give you more ideas and push you forward.
Brilliant. So is there anything that you wish you were taught at school then? So you're saying it was very useful to you, but now you've sort of grown up. Is there anything you look back and go, do you know, I think it'd been really helpful if they'd have taught me that earlier in school rather than learning it whilst you were out in the real world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm dating myself, but we were on the typewriter and we had micro typing or whatever it's called. I mean, I guess it wasn't part of many school curriculums unless you went to private school. But finance was never a mention. Yeah, you could, be taught calculus, and advanced mathematics, but the simplicity of balancing a checkbook or how to invest. I remember when I was in kind of the 6th grade, we had someone come in and hand us all Wall Street journals and say, let's look at the stock market. But it was only for like one day, one or 2 days. And this is before any computers. And we had to theorize how the market would do based upon looking at a week of the Wall Street Journal to see how stocks went up and down. And I thought that was very interesting, playing with fake money and trying to figure out that aspect. But then that was it. It was kind of like a show and tell about how stocks worked. I wish there was something in high school that would have taught me how to save money, invest it, and all that good stuff, because then I would less rely on my parents for things that I wanted, and I could almost be more independent at a very young age. So there are 2 things I wish that were taught more in school when I was there.
And that's fascinating because it sounds very similar to what you just said your platform is going to do. So I don't know if that was, is that subconscious, do you think, that's guided you in this direction, or is that deliberate?
Well, I think it's just trying to give more tools to my kids, and by default giving other kids the same tools. Um, I mean, I look at our economy, I don't want to get into politics, but I sort of see a trend in the last 10 years of how our government in the U.S. has treated the financing, and how inflation is going higher and prices are going higher, and how there's no real benefits for people to use traditional banking in a way that they can excel or push through this inflation. So um, it's almost like these tools are a necessary evil that they have to learn, or I feel that they're going to be dependent upon their parents that may be actually going through the rough stuff that they're not aware of. So it's almost like they're equaling the playing field of having knowledge that I didn't have when I was such a young age to help out earlier in life. So, I mean, when I was a teenager, I had credit card debt at the wazoo. Hey, credit cards. But now it's like, I don't know. I don't want to give my kid a credit card. I'd rather them earn re, earn interest on some of the money that they've saved from what they've collected in gifts or whatever from family members that grow their money instead of getting into more and more debt. I myself I was in a lot of student debt that took me years to get out of. And I guess this is just a long-winded way of saying, was it subconscious? Yes, I guess, because I don't want my kids or other kids to be in the same situation that I was years and years after I've graduated from college.
Brilliant. No, I think that's great. Now, a slightly question which you've already touched on, but try and avoid your niche of what you're looking at now. But it's, what do you think students should be taught in school today that they're not, obviously, because you have children in school right now? And obviously you can't say cryptocurrency because we've already discussed that. What is one other thing you think we should be teaching students in school today?
I don't know. I don't know if self-reliance is a subject. um, I think I don't know. There's with the dawn of the internet and the way that we've grown in social media, there almost should be a class like how to navigate social media. With TikTok and YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. It just seems like when you get into high school, you're around 12 years old, 13 years old, and you're inundated with the social media that is 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. But so it's like it's very overwhelming for someone at that young age who's trying to develop themselves and try to understand who they are as a person with all of the noise that comes from social media sometimes. So I almost wish that in school they could be taught how to manage their social presence in the world properly. Maybe the do's and don'ts of what to post on the internet. I know that sounds kind of silly, but you just see a lot of kids, they just post anything and everything to get attention today. And I think sometimes it comes back to haunt them. But for others, it creates, YouTube influencers, if you want to call them that. So yeah, there should definitely be a course in how to navigate the social aspects of technology, something that didn't affect us. We were all analog at the time. We were not really into the space we are today.
Oh yeah, I don't know about you, but I find it fascinating that looking back at my school life, is that a lot of what I was sort of preparing for and the jobs I was preparing for, especially like what I'm doing now, like running an online school and yourself creating a cryptocurrency platform, these sort of words weren't even mentioned or even thought about when I was in school. And yet now they're
Right.
everyday things. I find that fascinating. Sorry.
An influencer for when we were young was when you went to the fair and you threw a dart at a poster, and that poster was the iconic person that you looked up to. That was your influencer, whether it was a TV personality or a rock star or a heartthrob. These were the pictures on your walls that represented the social influencers. And if you wanted to learn about them, you went out and you bought a magazine and you read about them, or you saw them on the television. But today, my phone beeps probably 3,000 times a day about every notification known to man, you know, and I mean, I get hundreds of thousands of emails a month. It's just, it's too much for me as an adult to actually handle. I can only imagine what goes through a kid's mind when they eventually get involved, you know, when they set up their first account and they're like, wow, I can talk to anyone in the world and I can post something to anyone in the world. You know, it's just, it's very, it's almost like you have to have a license to post today.
No, brilliant. I think that is a fantastic idea of what should be taught in schools. I think that's really good, and something we're trying to bring in at the British Online School of our extracurricular activities is definitely that social media aspect of it. But I don't know if you can answer this question for us, but obviously a lot of the language you've used and the words that are coming out, you're obviously, and you've already said it, you're from America. Now, I don't know if you know the British education system at all, but could you possibly give us what you know to be the differences between the US schooling and the British schooling?
To be honest with you, I have not done the research. I believe schooling in Europe is free, but it's included in taxes, or there's some way where it's made free for all, but the way that it's paid for is different than here. Is that, am I in the realm of that being correct?
Yeah, no, all the way through until college is free for everyone in the UK. And then you can get what's called a student loan to go to universities. But again, that's sort of paid as a tax because it's just taken out of your wage when you start working. But college onwards for the US is all self-funded, correct?
Yes. So if you go to public school up to 12th grade, it's covered by the state. But yes, everything, all colleges are self-funded, and it's even more so. So if you live in one state and you want to go to a university in another state, it's almost 3 to 4 times the cost, just because you're going to a university in a different state. And everything, I like to say, everything is a la carte in the United States. So it's not like your room and board is separate, your food is separate, your books are separate, your computers are separate, and then there's requirements. Now I've been out of school for 22 years, so, but I'm pretty sure the tuition is, 5 times it was when I was in university. So yes, and that's one of the issues that we have, unfortunately, in the US, is that student debts and not being able to repay them is through the roof. I mean, some of my friends are still repaying their student loans, and we're in our 40s now. So
yeah.
Maybe you can share with me one of the biggest pros in education in the UK, so that I can have some education on that.
I think the biggest pros is that regardless of whether you go to a private school or a public school, we tend to follow the same curriculum and we tend to try and put the same values across. Now, are they always successfully delivered? No, for different reasons. If you're in a public school, that's in a bit of a slightly worse off area. The teachers can struggle to get that across. But I think regardless of whether you're in that private school or the best public school, you come out with a pretty similar education. And I think that's quite a nice thing. It's just those who go to public school, they tend to get a bit of a nicer campus, the newer technologies. Some would argue the better teachers, but I wouldn't go that far, not all the time. But you come out, regardless of what city you're in, town you're in, pretty much the same educated level, which I personally think is a good thing. And with our universities, I think the media can sometimes, I wouldn't want to say lie, or to quote an American famous politician, say it's fake news, but they do sometimes, I think they compare our student loans with your student loans, which has to be paid back monthly, whether you have a job or not, and can lead to serious financial implications. Whereas the university systems in the UK, you get student loans from what's called Student Finance England, and you only pay that back if you're working. So if you're unemployed, if you're traveling, or if you're in a lower paying job, you're not actually forced to pay it back, and it's all taken out as sort of a tax. Whereas in the news, they try to make out it's the same as you guys, that it's affecting you, whether you're poor, whether you're rich or whatever. So I think actually the way our university system works is very good as well, because you only pay back what you can afford to pay back.
Well, yeah, that is a benefit. The way that it sits now is, even if someone who has a student loan would happen to pass away, that student loan would then go to the next of kin, and it would go on for perpetuity until it was paid through the family.
No,
And which I think is horrendous. They always want that student loan paid. But again, we've gone through 2 administrations. We've gone through this really complicated and convoluted infrastructure bill that's going through right now, which I don't know what's in it, but so there's a lot of balls in the air as far as how money in the United States is flowing into education, and how student loans are being handled. But taxation is always a huge, topic for education. I feel it's a hindrance, unfortunately, especially for families that have kind of low income and they can't afford some universities. And let me kind of pivot there for a second, and that's why I believe platforms like the one that I'm building and other platforms that I've used, I think they're key. Because when you are at a university and you get a textbook, you have that textbook and you learn your class, you get your grade, and you move on. But with a platform like mine and others, you own that video forever. So you sign up and you watch those videos, and you can watch them 100,000 times if you want. They never go away. So it's almost like having access to information for the rest of your life if you need to refer back to it. And that's what I love about these programs and the internet and that aspect of technology, is that you can always refer back to it. If something happens and you're like, oh, I got to take a pause, you can always go back and review what you've missed and just pick up where you left off. I think that's the main difference between the traditional university with some of these online platforms that teach in a different way.
That's brilliant. And you're the second sort of person we've had on who is into NFTs. We had Professor Cardano on right at the beginning of these podcasts, and he said the same thing. He said that when he was at school, he wished he could have access to the likes of YouTube and your platform that you're creating, for the exact reason you've just said, the idea of being able to go back at his own time and work at his own speed. So I think that's fascinating. Before we move on to our last 2 questions, though, you have something to announce for our students and parents, don't you, of what's coming up on Saturday?
So Saturday, the presentation that I love to give to the parents and students is the introductory to what an NFT is, and all the cool and fascinating ways that you can create an NFT, some of the tools that are free and at your disposal, and kind of like a walkthrough. I love to share some of the generators that I use, some of the marketplaces that I'm on, some of my own NFTs, some of my daughters, just to see the versatility out there. I want to touch on, I think, a 12-year-old that made 1,000 of his own artworks, and was able to pretty much raise enough money to pay off his schooling for the next 3 years. Amazing stuff. But I guess the main meat of that interaction on Saturday will be just to give an introduction to what it is, to explain to those that may have heard NFT, those 3 letters, and couldn't quite grasp what the meaning of it was or how it could benefit them. So yeah, I'm really excited to talk to a group of kids and parents for pretty much the first time. Danny's really given me the opportunity to reach out to some real students. But it'll be a great icebreaker into cryptocurrency, and to show kids and parents alike, some of the creative stuff they can get into. It's not all finances, there is a lot of creativity in cryptocurrency.
Brilliant. And we're really looking forward to it. I've already told some of the students as well, and they are very keen. It's definitely something within that younger generation that's a buzzword right now, and it'd be great to try and get as many parents, and we'll be advertising this from Monday onwards, and yeah, all parents and students are welcome. So the
Cool.
final two questions I ask everyone on our podcast. And number one is, what is your fondest memory of your time at school?
I touched on it briefly. So I was 12 years old, and I was taking one of the advanced art classes in my high school, and everyone was doing, paper mache projects with balloons, or they came in with Legos or whatever. And I always had a fascination with roller coasters, but I didn't know where to start. So my teacher came over and gave me a book and said, "Here's a book on roller coasters. Why don't you go through it and see if you can find a project?" So it took some time, but I was able, by the end of that semester, build a 6-foot roller coaster that had one giant loop at the end with a marble, all structured using, ironically, an architecture design, because I ended up going to architecture after high school. But I built a roller coaster, and they showcased it. When you in high school, they have that one glass like showcase thing when you walk into the school, and my roller coaster was there, for the end till the end of the year, and everyone that came in there got to see it. I know out of all the experiences I could have had in high school, I picked that one, and I think that one sticks in my mind the most, is because when I was in Catholic school before I transitioned to public school. So that was the first memory in public school that kind of set the tone for my next 4 years. If you've ever been a Catholic student, you have the same 2 teachers for every class, for every subject. You just go back and forth between rooms. And this experience was having 7 different teachers, and they were all different, and all different new friends and people's faces. And it was that one teacher that kind of took it upon himself to make me feel comfortable and show me and guide me onto what I was going to do to make that structure. And that's one memory that sticks out in high school.
Ah, how nice. And it's nice to see that one person can have such a big impact. Like say, if he hadn't done that, you would not now be creating this free platform. And I think that's fascinating. Sure. That's what I find quite an honor, being a teacher, that we really can have such a big impact. So it's nice to hear you say that as your fondest memory. Really quite nice. And our last question is, if you could give a piece of advice to anyone in school right now, whether they're just starting their first day or maybe getting ready to leave, what would that one piece of advice be?
I don't know. I have some affirmations that I say in the morning. I don't know. It's maybe kind of silly, but I just say to myself that I believe in myself before I do anything. So I wake up and I say I believe in myself, and it kind of gives me kind of that subconscious drive to do well for the day. But for a student in school, I think sometimes, especially at a very young age, people get discouraged really easily. And if I would give them any advice, I would just say, you can always try again the next day. You can always try again. You can always try and keep trying and trying and trying. Some of the people I look up to is they say fail often, because you'll learn every time you fail until you succeed. And I think a lot of people, they just give up after they fail a few times. I think it's really important to just keep failing until you succeed, because you're going to learn every step of the way. That's what I would. That's just a little bit of advice I would give someone just starting out in school.
That's really nice. That's a really, really nice piece of advice. Anyway, before I let you go, where can people find you if they want to follow your story, check out any of your NFTs, which we haven't spoken much about, but we've done that deliberately to make sure people come Saturday, or if they want to find your new platform and keep updated with how that's going as well?
We haven't finalized the platform location yet. I push people to my Twitter. So it's twitter.com/1BusyGuy with the number 1 in the front. And I have one of those Twitter link trees. The link tree is in my profile, which shows some of the NFT projects that I've created. I have a few websites that represent some of the artwork that I have created as NFTs, and 100% of the proceeds from any of those projects goes directly towards the foundation. So if you follow me on Twitter, or you just go through my feed, I often daily give information about the latest technologies that are coming out there. Some of the things I touch on are like virtual reality, which is very in the news with Facebook changing their name to Meta and the metaverses out there. Also, some of the news of new technologies like in the Cardano space, which I briefly mentioned about. And then I post NFTs from people that I admire and respect and their projects. And hopefully I'll be able to bring those artists into the platform for them to share their experiences, to help build the kind of the variety within the platform.
Nice. And I can say I've bought one of your NFTs, an Unsig Circle. So I'm glad to.
Oh, you bought one of mine?
Yes, I'll put it on the screen now for when the podcast.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. I looked through all your websites, and yeah, they look really quite funky. So yeah.
Yeah. The Unsigs project, it really stimulated, because in college I did color studies, and color studies is basically how that project was formed in the purest form of color. But I won't get into it. But I appreciate your support, and I appreciate your time and allowing me to talk about myself and the platform that I'm trying to launch.
No, it's been a pleasure having you on. And yes, any students or parents watching this on Saturday, you're all welcome to come and join and get to know more about Jamie's NFT project, and then more importantly, maybe how you can start your own as well. But no, we do really appreciate having you on. All your information will be linked in the bio below. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Danny.
Thank you for watching our podcast today. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to make sure you never miss out on the new ones we post every Monday and Wednesday. If you are interested in enrolling yourself or someone else into the British Online School, be sure to visit our website, britishonlineschool.co.uk, or you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and send us a direct message there as well. Just use the handle @BritOnlineSchool, spelled SCH, and you can find all our links below. Have a fantastic day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.